Good morning, everybody. We've got a lower trade in the grain markets here early on Thursday morning. It is 6:30 a.m. Central Time. March corn futures down 5 3/4 at 6.16 3/4. March soybeans down 10.5 cents at 15.34 3/4. March Chicago wheat down 7 1/4 at 7.47 3/4. March Kansas City wheat down 6.5 cents at 7.63. March spring wheat is down 2 1/4 at 9.05 3/4. If you guys are listening on the podcast, appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, guys, remember, if you want to listen on the podcast, if you're in the truck or whatever, this thing is available on every podcast app out there: Apple, Google, Spotify, every app out there, and it's updated or uploaded right after I do these live streams on YouTube. If you guys need some additional assistance from me, go to my website. It is www.standardgrain.com. Go to that website, click on Grain Marketing Plan here in the upper right-hand corner. Guys, I send out a ton of information to my subscribers every single business day, sometimes on weekends. I have a morning email that goes out at about 6:15 or 6:20 a.m. Central before I start these live streams. It includes all of my grain marketing recommendations, a ton of weather information, every overnight headline you need to be aware of. It also includes my subscriber-only videos. Yesterday, I talked exclusively about the soybean market, the volatility we're seeing here, some things that I'm watching. So if you're interested in these videos, guys, there's 5 or 6 of them a week. Give that subscription deal a shot. You can cancel it at any time. There's no other fee. There's no other obligation. I will not try to sell you anything else. U.S. ethanol stocks continue to surge. Stocks rose again last week to the tune of 5.6%. Since the low posted in October of 2021, ethanol stocks have risen 30%. That's a phenomenal increase. Ethanol production margins have fallen drastically, largely because we've seen two things. We've seen a drastic increase in the cost of corn, and we've seen a drastic decline in the price of ethanol. Chicago Platts ethanol futures peaked near $3.45 per gallon in November. They settled at $2.07 yesterday. So ethanol prices have declined 40% in the last 2 months, while corn prices have rallied. That's a bad combination for the U.S. ethanol producer. Now, that being said, production margins are around break even. That's not abnormal historically. U.S. ethanol producers will continue to grind corn for ethanol around break even margins. That's something that's happened on and off very, very often throughout the years. But this increase in stocks are at the highest level now since April of 2020. And if we continue at this pace here for another week or two, you could be back to where we were in regard to stocks at like the COVID panic. And it would only take another week or two of this kind of increase to see that. So there's a lot of questions here. At what point does the U.S. ethanol producer start grinding less corn for ethanol? That's a concern here that I think a lot of people share. The general thought is that we're producing ethanol, or have been producing ethanol, very, very quickly at a very strong pace, and gasoline demand is not keeping up with that. Ethanol production on the week was only down, or was actually up on the week by about half a percentage point. It was up 11% versus the same week last year, but down 3.8% versus the same week in 2020. So the actual levels of ethanol production are pretty much normal, generally speaking, but the surge in stocks is of concern, certainly. Some HRW wheat areas here in the United States saw some snow this week. Snow fell across parts of eastern and southern Kansas, as well as a good chunk of Oklahoma. Central and western Kansas largely missed the event, and that's really the area where the drought is most severe the further west you go. The snow amounts were variable, 2 inches up to 7 inches. I think I saw some numbers even higher than that. You got to remember, guys, you need like 10 to 12 inches of snow to equal 1 inch of rain. So this is not a drought-busting event by any means. And maybe the more important thing here is that there's really nothing behind this in terms of rainfall or snow in the forecast. The forecast for Kansas looks very dry the next 7 days, and your 6 to 10 looks very dry as well. Pretty much same thing for the entire plains. I mean, a little bit of scattered rain or snow in parts of Texas, Oklahoma, also in the Dakotas, Kansas, Nebraska, almost completely dry. So a little bit of snow for Kansas, but that's not a drought-busting event, in my opinion. USDA reported a larger sale of old crop soybeans yesterday, 380,000 metric tons. That's about 14 million bushels. This is one of the larger sales we've seen recently. It was reported to an unknown destination. Could be China, could be somebody else. It's probably the product of a lighter South American crop. You're typically not seeing these sort of sales this time of year. This is typically when the business moves to Brazil, but you've got a Brazilian crop problem. You're looking at a crop that's going to be hundreds of millions of bushels lighter in Brazil than what we had thought a couple months ago. So you may see some more of this. Watch the export sales report this morning, see if there was any under the radar business. We've seen a lot of that here recently. That report will be out at 7:30. Global food prices continue to rise. The Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, that's part of the United Nations. They have this World Food Price Index where they track world food prices, essentially. The index was up 1% in January versus December, but this index is up 20% over the last 12 months. It has risen a whopping 49% from its May 2020 low. The index is only 1.6% below the all-time high that was posted in March of 2011. So food is expensive. We understand that. It's not as big of an issue for us here in the United States. Generally speaking, in the U.S., citizens, people here, we spend a small portion of our paychecks or income on food. In poorer countries, developing countries, they spend a huge amount of their income on food, and that's where the issue lies. And that's why you've seen some restrictions, like we saw Indonesia restrict or essentially eliminate palm oil exports. That was the one item actually that rose the most as part of this index last month. Vegetable oils were up 4.2% on the month as a result of drastically higher prices of palm oil, soybean oil, etc. I think grain prices were actually about flat. Wheat's actually been down. So this is something to pay attention to. My guess is that we'll probably be up into all-time highs at some point here over the next couple of months. JBS agreed to settle $52.5 million is what they're going to pay in an antitrust settlement. Other defendants in this most recent case include the usual suspects, Tyson, National, and Cargill. This particular suit was brought by beef wholesalers who alleged an industry-wide price-fixing scheme. They alleged it's been in place since 2015. JBS did not admit liability. They said that the settlement was in its best interest. They settled a similar deal to the tune of $24.5 million back in 2020 tied to price-fixing in the pork industry. Now, we've seen some limited action from the White House in regard to this issue as of late. Lawsuits from other groups are active. Lawsuits from cattle producers, commercial beef producers, consumers still active. We've seen some chatter from the White House. They're going to send some money to small cattle producers, but are they going to do anything to break up what Bloomberg called the beef cartel in their article yesterday? I don't know if that happens anytime soon, but JBS writing a big check here, and for them, it's really probably not a big check at all. We'll see our export sales report this morning at 7:30 a.m. Central Time. Current marketing year sales expected: corn 600,000 to 1.3 million. Soybean sales expected 600 to 1.2. Wheat sales expected 200 to 675. The cattle market had a good day yesterday. Life of contract highs in the April live cattle contract and also the June live cattle contract. Feeder cattle had a really nice day also. Cash cattle was kind of thin, 137 to 141. The box beef market was lower yesterday. That cattle inventory report earlier this week was kind of friendly. In the outside markets, the U.S. dollar is marginally higher. The S&P 500 is down 43. The Dow's down about 70. Bonds off a little bit. Precious metals off a little bit. Crude oil is down $1.10 in the March WTI contract. Have a great day today, guys. I'll talk to you Friday.